Now, it is my great honor to introduce a friend of Fisher's and a man whose accomplishments and impacts speak for themselves. Mark Goldston is a preeminent leader in marketing with more than 30 years of experience working at globally recognized brands such as Revlon, Fabergé, LA Gear, United Online, and Reebok. In fact, as Reebok's first ever chief marketing officer, Mark supervised the development of the Reebok Pump, the first athletic shoe to feature internal inflation. In 1999, Mark served as the chairman and CEO of NetZero, a startup internet service provider with a business model that was ahead of its time. 2 years later, NetZero merged with Juno Online to become United Online, a public internet company that grew to include numerous social networking websites as well as FTD Flowers, the century-old flower wire service retailer and wholesaler. Mark is now executive chairman of Pulse Health, chairman and CEO of the Goldston Group, and most recently became the co-founder and general partner of Athletic Propulsion Labs, an athletic footwear and apparel company founded by his sons, Adam and Ryan. Throughout this amazing career, however, Mark has remained a dedicated and loyal Buckeye. He's a member of the Dean's Advisory Council here at Fisher. He delivered the commencement address to the class of 1994 inside Ohio Stadium. And most recently, Mark returned to Fisher, where he was honored with the 2012 Beta Alpha Psi Distinguished Alumni Award. Please join me in welcoming one of our very own, Mr. Goldston.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So good to be here. Thank you, Anil. Thank you to Chris Poon, your former dean, a dear friend, did an amazing job, and Joe Aludo, who Joe and I met when Abraham Lincoln was in the White House, and I've known forever and is an absolute icon at Ohio State. Actually, this is kind of weird for me. Last time I was in Mershon, I think it was at a Billy Preston concert in 1975, and we all must have looked like really funny, you know, with big hair, bell-bottom pants, and I'm really not that old, so I'm not sure how that actually happened, but I'm going to try to do something today that's a little bit different than a conventional commencement speech, because I actually have sons that are the same age that most of you guys are, and they say, "Dad, please don't put people to sleep." They don't want to hear the platitudes of a normal commencement speech. These are master's students, MBAs, people who are in a position where they go out in the work world, come back to school, and then go back out again. And so you're talking to people who have actually already tasted the reality of the work world and made a conscious decision to come back here to get more education and get leverage to try to drive your career forward. So I'm going to share a little bit with you about the path that I had, because it's ironic that the path I took is very similar to the path that a lot of you want to take today. I know that seems odd, because when I got out of business school in '78 and went into corporate America, the thought of people your age getting into a position of authority was really pretty slim. But it turned out to be the case. And I wanted to follow an entrepreneurial path, but I wanted to work within a large corporation, which sounds like an oxymoron. But in fact, that can be done. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, because there's a lot of things that you can do for yourself and your career, even though you're just starting out with your degree, that can have dividends for you for the entire rest of the time that you're working. And you know, when I went to NetZero, and Neil talked about it in the remarks, people thought I was having a midlife crisis. I mean, I was in my mid-40s, and I sort of dropped out and went to this thing called the internet, which was weird. There were no real internet companies of note. And I walked in a room that was probably 2,000 square feet with rodents running back and forth. We had something called the Frito mouse. He would show up every day at 3 o'clock, and he'd have a Frito in his mouth, and he'd run across the floor, and everybody would freak out. And finally, after a while, we started to worry if we didn't see him, like if he was okay. Like, how come the Frito Mouse isn't here today? And when friends of mine would come out to LA to visit me, and I'd have them to the office, they'd go, what happened? Like, you're sitting in a room of 50 people, 2,000 square feet, you're at an open desk. Like, did something happen? What happened to your career? I said, this internet thing is going to be a big deal. And they're like, oh, Mark, another crazy idea. Turned out, we took the company public in September of 1999, and we had $3.5 million of quarterly revenue, which is like a good t-shirt shop. And we had the third biggest IPO of we raised $184 million we raised on a company with $3.5 million of trailing quarterly revenue. You know, as I'm fond of saying, you can't make that up. But the really good thing was I was on the treadmill one morning and my mom calls me and she says, hey Mark, did you read the journal today? I said, no Mom, I'm on the treadmill, why? She says, we might not want to read it today. Today's probably not a good day. I go, why not? She goes, well, you've been called the dumbest business model of all time. I sat down with that. She said, no. In fact, they also referred to the merger that you just did with Juno as being two skunks trying to breed a mink. This is my mother telling me this. So I'm like, you know, Mom, they're not too far wrong. I mean, we are kind of two skunks. I mean, the internet had gone up and then it crashed. So I lived through the nuclear winter of the internet. So we were everybody's darlings, and then we were, you know, the scourge of the earth. The internet melted down. I had a 37-cent stock. 37 cents. That means it doesn't have a 1 in front of it. So I get a letter from the NASDAQ, and they say, because these are the same people who loved you when you rang the bell, when you took your company public, that if you don't get your stock over $1 in 60 days, we're kicking you off the NASDAQ. So what did I do? I found another company that had a 67-cent stock that also got a NASDAQ delistment letter. And what do you think we did? We merged. So the two skunks actually did come together, and within a year, that dumbest business model of all time actually made a profit. And over the ensuing 13 years, that company made almost $2 billion of EBITDA. From the dumbest freaking business model of all time. So what's the lesson? Now think about this, because you guys are going to get presented with opportunities that your family or your friends are going to say, boy, that just seems too far afield. But this is what mavericks do. So some people like to say they're mavericks, and some people actually like to be mavericks. And people have to not be afraid to fail when you go into businesses like this. Because when you see people who are entrepreneurs, very rarely will you ever find an entrepreneur who hit it right on the first time. Very rarely. You know the old expression, what do you call somebody who's failed 5 times? A serial entrepreneur. And there's a lot to that. So what I want to do today, as he puts on his reading glasses, is I want to talk to you guys about 2 things. One, about this millennial group that you are, and how you're going to change this business world forever. And I'm going to give you some information that'll probably blow you away if you don't already know it. And then I'm going to give you something that I call the Goldston 5. It's a catchy phrase. And there are 5 key things that you can not only use when you get out of here, but you can actually use them for the rest of your life as a way in which to help guide you through whatever it is you choose as your path. So the first thing I'll do is talk about this millennial situation. So for those of you in the audience who aren't millennials, like all of us, so there's 4 key groups that you need to know about. There's the traditionalists, and I'm not naming any names, but those are people who basically were born prior to 1943, so 1900 to 1943. And today, they're about 4% of the workforce. And those are typically people who would have a 7 in front of their age or more, but they're still in the workforce. And then you have the group that Chris Poon and myself and Anil are part of, and that's the baby boomers. And that's been, you know, largely hailed as the most productive generation of our time. Just saying. Not for nothing, I'm just saying. Then you have Gen X. So Gen X, Generation X, that's a group that was 1965 to 1975, Those guys, different ball game. They were the first people after the boomers, tough act to follow, lots of changes going on, very unsettling. And then you got you folks, the millennials. And millennials today are 19 to 32 years old. And you're going to change the world. And if you look at the workplace today on a global basis, other than the 3 or 4% in the traditionalists, it's about a third millennials, it's about a third baby boomers, Gen Xers, and it's about a third millennials. So baby boomers, millennials, Gen Xers. In 5 years, the millennials are going to be 65% of the global workforce. By 2025, which is 10 years, it's going to be approaching 75% of the global workforce is going to be millennials. And then you have this effect that's called the silver tsunami. Some of us don't have silver yet, but we're in that group. And the silver tsunami are people 55 plus in the workforce. So people used to retire at 65, but that's because they died at 68. With life expectancies being what they are today and the cost of living being what it's being, people are working well into their high 70s. So you're going to be the first group of people who are going to have to deal with a world where 70+% are going to be in your group, and the other 30% are going to be a much older workforce. And you guys are going to all have to figure out how to make that work, and a lot of those people are probably going to be working for you. Whereas in the old days, you would have always been working for them. And I want to talk about this because the millennials are changing the way businesses are being constructed. I was at a presentation a few weeks ago from Gensler. Gensler is the worldwide famous architectural firm, and they showed us the new office buildings that they're building all around the world that are being mindful of you folks and how you think and how you work. And the business of cubicle to small windowless office to small windowed office to a little bit bigger office, that's gone. Because this generation doesn't want to sit in cubicles and little offices with windows. This generation wants to be up and moving around and integrating. You guys believe, which I share your view, that sitting is the new smoking. Sitting is about the most unhealthy thing anybody can do. We weren't built to sit. But your generation is the first group that's actually done something about that. So you're digitally savvy. You live on your smartphones and your tablets. The last thing you do at night, according to recent studies, 80% of millennials, the last thing they do at night is what? Check their smartphone. You know the old adage that everybody ends the evening with good night kiss? Now that's a smudge on an iPhone screen. It's true. So businesses used to say, don't bring your cell phones to work, only make business calls. Good luck with that. You folks live in a smartphone, tablet type world, and so businesses are going to have to adapt. The other thing you guys are very focused on is flexible work hours. Flexible work hours would have been heresy to suggest 10 years ago. What does that mean? I mean, in my day, flexible work hours meant sleeping late, right? Today, it's, hey, I may be sending you an email at 11 o'clock at night. I might send you an email at 1 o'clock in the morning. Am I on the clock? If I'm working a job at a major multinational company and I'm working 9 to 6, am I off duty after that? Does that mean I shouldn't send the email at 11 o'clock at night because I wanted to get the project done? So millennials are saying to their employers, don't hold me to this 9 to 6 malarkey. Don't hold me to sitting in a cubicle. Tell me what I need to get done. Tell me when I need to get it done, and I'll get it done. And if I want to do it at 11 o'clock at night, and I therefore want to be in the office at 10:30 in the morning instead of 9 o'clock, I'll be at the staff meeting. I'll make sure I'm at the key meetings I need to be at, but I'm not just going to sit there like an automaton and punch a clock. That's a very difficult thing for anybody in the workforce who's in the baby boomer generation to grasp. Because we're used to being in positions of authority where we create the rules and then we enforce the rules. And people who come in behind us learn the rules, adopt them, and then they become us, basically. And your generation is committed to, and I mean this in a respectful way, not becoming us. You don't want to become your parents. You want to take the best of what your parents have given you and become your own generation and not copy what's been done time and time again. And that, to me, is an incredible thing, because I believe you are the first group of people ever to enter a workforce where there's the opportunity for bilateral mentoring. So what do I mean by that? By the way, I get this. I have 28-year-old twin sons, and I get this from them all the time. I mean, literally, since they got out of school and have started their own company, I have learned so much from my sons that I would have thought they were 10 years away from being able to impart business knowledge to me. But they are so much more, and I was on the internet forever, digitally savvy. They live in a world where social networking is second nature to you. Your digital awareness is so far in excess of the senior management of any company you're about to join that if the companies are smart, while they're mentoring you and they're teaching you, because you have to learn this, how to run a business, what it takes to resource capital, what it takes to evaluate people, what it takes to create products, you can teach them how to communicate to consumers using the digital world that you are very much more facile with than they are. So you can mentor up and they can mentor down. And let me tell you something. If the leaders are secure enough to allow you to do that, I can't even imagine what business is going to accomplish in the next 10 years. Because you have to have a seat at the table. When I entered business, you would not have had a seat at the table. I became a CEO of Fabergé. I was 31 years old. I was really young. And for a while, it was very hard for people to deal with the fact that someone young had a job with this level of authority. You don't really have to deal with that phenomenon anymore. You live in a world where we've become accustomed to young people having a very high level of responsibility, authority, and more importantly, respect. You don't have to apologize for the fact that you have light tenure. You have to celebrate it. You have to not be so cocky that you think that the old world is not something you need to learn about. But you've got to be confident enough to say, I'm going to have a seat at this table, and I'm going to make a contribution here. And I'm going to be somebody adding value, even though I may be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out of school. Because what's interesting about you guys, when we got out of school, our plan didn't work out that way, was to spend probably most of our career with one, maybe two companies. Your former dean, I don't know if she's ever told you this, was one of the most accomplished executives in the United States. I mean, she ran a major pharmaceutical division of Johnson & Johnson. That is a huge accomplishment. But she did it as an enlightened leader. One of the reasons she could adapt to this job as the dean of this school is because she was an enlightened executive. She'd come in here with classic corporate speak to try to be the dean of students who are millennials. That wouldn't work. So you guys are all going to hold between 6 and 9 jobs in your careers. That's what all the data suggests. And you guys think that spending 18 months or 24 months on a job is just fine. In our generation, that would have been called a tenurist. Today, that's called a maverick. And so I implore you to find something you're passionate about, because I think there's going to be a huge level of transiency in the workforce in the next 5 years, because the economy was so bad in 2008 to 2013 that many young people took jobs just to get a job. It wasn't what they were trained in, it wasn't what they wanted to do, but they needed to get a job. And now that the economy is going to get better and the opportunities will come in front of them, they're going to say, I now want to pursue that which I was either trained for or I'm passionate about. So you're going to see a huge amount of displacement in people who are in the millennial generation. And that's going to be very disruptive to business, and they're not sure how they're going to deal with it because they invested all this money in training people that they know for certain are about to leave the coop. So you guys and gals are in a unique situation. You're walking out of here with an outstanding degree that you can leverage all different ways in the workplace. And you have a respect level from your superiors in terms of age where they're actually counting on you to add value to an enterprise versus going in as a plebe. And I think that would have been the most wonderful situation to be in as a graduating master's student. Very few people have ever had that opportunity. You also have the advantage of having a Fisher degree, which in my estimation is, a tremendously prestigious thing to have. And I know a lot of you are going to go work in corporate America, and the respect that this school has gained in the past 15, 20 years versus what it was before, which was good, now it's great, is really special. So one of the words of wisdom I'm going to give you before the Goldston 5 is, one of the things to remember is, and you really need to think about this, and I'm sure your parents will appreciate me saying this. So age is not what makes you old. What makes you old is being closed-minded, intransigent, and resistant to change. And if you're not any of those things, you can be the most innovative maverick on the planet in your 60s, your 70s, well into your 80s. Look at Callaway. The golf company was invented by Ellie Callaway in his late 60s. He was supposed to be in retirement. Couldn't get any distance on his drive, so he invented an oversized driver. How'd that work out? So think about this. It's got nothing to do with chronological age. It has everything to do with perspective and attitude. So with that, I want to transition you into my Goldston 5, because to be quite frankly with you, these things are timeless. I could have told you this 10 years ago. I can tell it now, and I can come back in 10 years and do the same thing, and I think they will work for you. And so I hope that you guys will embrace this. And one of the first things that I talk about, I wrote a book back in the early 90s called The Turnaround Prescription, which, by the way, I would suggest everybody get a copy of. And keep it next to your bed. So if you can't sleep, 10 pages of this thing, you'll be out like a light, and there's no side effects. It's a little dry, just saying, but it was written as a blueprint on how to fix troubled companies. And one of the things that I coined, and I've always used, is this term called a go-to-war skill. So if we declare war tomorrow and everyone has to become a specialist, what's your specialty? What do you do better than somebody else? And if you don't have one, you need to get one. Because a go-to-war skill is something you will use for the rest of your career. Think about it. When you're in high school, who gets the best grades? The people who are good in every subject. They're generalists. Most of those people will never be CEOs. I hate to say this, I hope I'm not offending anyone. The people who become top of the heap are people who are specialists. They were great at math, they were brilliant at science, they were gifted at writing, but they weren't good at everything. So when you start your career, you're a specialist. And if you're a great specialist, guess what happens? You get to become a CEO. And you know what happens when you become a CEO? You become a generalist. So you've taken your go-to-war skill to the top, and now you're a generalist. And now you have to be responsible for everything. So you need to develop a go-to-war skill. It is really important. You've got about 3 or 4 years that if you don't have one, you won't get one. And so I would implore you to do voracious amounts of reading in whatever specialty you think you have and make yourself indispensable. So that's number one. Second thing is, and I say this all the time, is control your own destiny. You have got to take control of your own career. There is no master plan. I hate to break this to you. 90% of the people who work in companies think there's a master plan for me. Not really true. There's a lot of transiency. Bosses leave. People get laid off. Companies get acquired. The only person who's going to worry about you is you. So you're all CEOs. You're CEOs of a private company. You know what the company's called? You. and you need to manage it that way. You have a personal brand. You need to nurture that personal brand because nobody else is going to worry about it except you. The next thing I want you to do, and I want you to do this like starting tomorrow, is I want you to write a 5-year plan for yourself. What's my 5-year? Forget about 10-year plans and 15-year plans. We could be in flying cars by then. Really. One thing you know about a 10-year plan is it's going to be wrong. 5-year plans are where do I need to be? If I'm not there in 5 years, I need to course correct because the years will burn off before you know it. So set a plan, set objectives, and make sure what you're doing is tracking you along that path. Because as I'm telling you, nobody else is going to do it. And you will wake up one day and you will go, where did the time go? And how did all these other people pass me by? And that is not a great thing to have happen. The fourth thing is, and I feel very strongly about this, is ethics. You can't, I think it's so funny when people say, I'm taking a course to learn ethics. You don't learn ethics. You either have them or you don't. You don't learn ethics. Did you cheat on tests in school? Then you don't have ethics. Did you steal things from the drugstore? Then you don't have ethics. So either you have them or you don't. So if you commit yourself in business, I've been a CEO for 30 years. I commit I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to make mistakes, but they won't be ethical mistakes. They'll be mistakes of judgment. I was just wrong. But you have to take the high road, and you cannot compromise your ethics. And if you think you can get ahead faster or make more money by taking a shortcut that's going to cause you to toss and turn and say, I wonder if I should have done that, don't do it. Don't do it. It's really important because I've seen it happen, and I'm going to tell you right now, there is no erase button on your reputation, especially with the internet. Whatever you do, whatever party you're at, remember, somebody's there with a camera. And it ain't TMZ. And if it is, maybe you'll enjoy that. But if it's not good. College ball players have lost scholarships because of it. Young traders have ended up wearing orange jumpsuits because of it. It's really important. So you don't need to learn ethics. You need to practice ethics. If you don't like the laws in this country, change them. If you don't like the rules, change them. But until they're changed, obey them. Because that's the way it works. And that's not old-fashioned, that's the gospel. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about, and your parents will resonate to this, each one of you need to be special. You need to think you're special. You need to be special. You need to act that way. Because if you don't, nobody will think you are. We were telling our children from the time they were this big, I was always told I was special. Okay, so they lied a little bit, but the net of it was I believed it. Remember that old Aldous Huxley book? I think it was Brave New World that we all read. 120 repetitions makes a truth. If you hear it enough times, you'll believe it, right? You've got to make yourself special. You've got to make yourselves indispensable. You're in a job, say, they can't do without me. I need to make myself project that. Whether it's true or not, it's perception. And if you start to feel that way, you'll be self-confident, you'll project that confidence, and people will want to be around you. You know, people always say leaders are born, they're not bred. That's just wrong. There are leaders who are born, but there are also leaders who are bred. Somebody decides, I want to be a leader. What are the traits that are required? What do I have to do to become a leader? And am I capable of doing that? And if you believe you're a leader, other people will believe you're a leader. And then no one will begrudge the fact that John got promoted or Susan just left to get a much bigger job. They will respect the fact that you were a leader. And when it comes time to think about how to advance you in your career, guess who are the people that they think about? The people who are special. How did they get to be special? Because they said they were. And they acted accordingly. So if you take these principles, they apply to your whole life. If you're going to become parents, whether you're a parent or you're an executive or you're a soccer coach, these same principles apply. Follow the rules, be special, have a special skill, do things the right way, and control your own destiny and make your own plan. Where does that not apply in your life? So I think you guys have I'm excited for you because I want to be a part of this as well. I'm not going anywhere. But we need your generation to accomplish what we need to get accomplished as a country if we're going to stay on the forefront as the global innovator. Because there's a lot of people who think that we've slipped from that. And you guys are the future. So we need to enable you, we need to empower you, we need to support you, but we need to work together. This is going to be a bi-generational task, and you guys are going to pull more than your share of the weight. So I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be a Buckeye, and I'm really excited for what you guys are going to accomplish in your lives going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, for an extraordinary speech.
Thank you.
Your insights will stay with us.
Thank you. Thank you.